It all started when my father was diagnosed with cancer. I was 14, just entering high school, and I thought my biggest challenge would be mathematics or something. Dad had been tired for a long time, but we assumed it was simply work stress, you know? Then, one typical Tuesday after school, Mom sat me down in our kitchen and told me that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. The following 6 months were like watching a movie about someone else's life. Dad became seriously ill very quickly. He had lost all of his hair and so much weight that his favorite Chicago Bears shirt looked huge on him. He tried to keep joking and even helped me with my math homework, even though he could barely sit up when they took him to the hospital for the last time. He told me, "Don't let your mom's cooking mess up your stomach before I get back." That was just like Dad. He was always trying to make me laugh. He died on Thursday. I remember because it was supposed to be pizza night. We'd always order a deep dish on Thursdays. I'd been doing it since I was a child. Instead, I was sitting in a hospital waiting room under those harsh fluorescent lights, watching my mother scream into her phone while telling our relatives. I expected that to be the worst part of my life. Boy, was I mistaken. Mom completely lost it after Dad died. She started dating again about 2 months later, claiming she needed to feel alive. This is how she met Derek Rich, a real estate developer. He began visiting Mom frequently, bringing her expensive gifts and taking her on weekend getaways. I tried to be happy for her. Dad would not want her to feel sad all the time, right? Then, she married Derek less than a year after Dad's death. They didn't even tell me about their engagement. I found out when she asked me to try on a junior bridesmaid dress she had already bought. The wedding was held at a luxury country club in Newport Beach. All of Derek's wealthy friends were present, staring at us as if we were some charity case Derek had adopted. I spent most of the reception hiding in the bathroom, trying not to cry. That's when things really shifted. Mom and Derek moved into his massive Newport Beach home, which included a pool and a tennis court. But guess what? There was no room for me. Mom thought I'd be better off living with Dad's sister and Aunt Lisa in Chicago. Who benefits from greater comfort? Mom. So I was sent off to Chicago like a parcel no one wanted. Aunt Lisa lives in a large mansion in Lincoln Park with Uncle Marcus and my cousins, Michael, 17, and Rebecca, 18. We used to be very close as children. Every summer, they'd come to visit, and we'd spend weeks making up silly games and building blanket forts together. But man, everything changed after I moved in. I was no longer their happy summer cousin. Instead, I was an unwanted addition to their house. They began acting as if I was occupying their space, consuming their food, breathing their precious air or something. Michael was always knocking over my belongings by accident. Rebecca would make small comments about how her clothes were too expensive to lend me when I first arrived and didn't have any winter clothing. Aunt Lisa was the worst. However, she made it very clear that I was a burden. She even started charging me rent while I was still in high school. Who actually does that? The most upsetting part? Mom just stopped calling. Like, fully. She would occasionally send money. Not enough to meet Aunt Lisa's rent, but that was all. I tried calling her, but she was always too busy with her new life. Yoga consumed too much of her time. Too busy attending charitable events. She was too preoccupied to talk to her own child. I'd see images on Facebook of her and Derek vacationing in Europe, attending lavish events, and enjoying a life separate from mine. She even stored all of our old family photos, including those with Dad and me. She said they didn't match her new profile. It felt like I was just some old furniture that didn't fit her new decor. I started having dreams about being back in our old kitchen, where everything was regular. Then I'd wake up crying in this strange bedroom at Aunt Lisa's house, staring at beautiful wallpaper that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. It felt as if I had lost both parents, not just one. After the first month, Aunt Lisa raised my rent for property taxes or whatever. I'm 15, but okay, I guess I need a job. That's when my cousin Rebecca, who is always so helpful, tells me about this 24-hour laundromat that is hiring in what she refers to as the dodgy section of Chicago. It's this dilapidated structure sandwich between a closed-down doll store and a super suspicious phone repair company that I'm pretty sure never fixes phones. The owner, this old guy named Jerry, looks at me and says, "You're way too young to work the midnight shift." But when I assured him I could start that night and wouldn't complain about the salary, my age became less of an issue. So my life became this hectic schedule that still makes me anxious just thinking about it. Midnight until 6 a.m. at the laundromat. I had to deal with the strangest folks you can imagine. The worst part wasn't the strange customers. It was how cold the place was. The heating hardly worked, and Chicago winters are no joke. I'd wear about 3 hoodies just to get through my shift. They didn't include that in the job description, right? However, one job wasn't enough to cover Lisa's rent, let alone basic necessities such as food and school supplies. So I started working at a gas station called Quick Stop from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is where my lovely cousins chose to make my life more enjoyable. See, Quick Stop was just next to their posh private school, where tuition was probably more than I earned in a single year. Michael and his friends thought it was hilarious to come in during my shifts and completely wreck the place. They'd knock over the chip displays I had just organized, spill their Slurpees across the floor, and leave open packs of beef jerky around. Rebecca was worse. However, she was sneaky about it. She'd come in with her cheerleading buddies, and they'd talk about me like I wasn't even there. "Oh my God, can you imagine having to work here? Like, I'd literally die," they'd say. Then they'd snap terrible photos of me attempting to clean up their messes and share them on social media. Things got tough at school as well. I was attending a local public high school, and somehow, Rebecca made sure everyone knew about my job. People began leaving quarters on my desk for laundry. Someone put a name tag on my locker that read "Washer Girl." Real creative, guys. Thanks. I was essentially sleeping through all my lessons. Who can stay up when you're working from midnight to 6? I tried to do schoolwork from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Then we started working again from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. My grades began to decline. Teachers constantly asked if everything was okay at home. I just explained that I was adjusting to the change. The one positive part of the laundromat work was a homeless man named Pete, who came in most nights. He wasn't like the other odd customers. He showed me how to fix the quarter machine when it became stuck. He showed me which customers were okay to let go when they were a quarter short. One night, Pete looked at me and said, "Kid, you're living life in expert mode right now." It made me giggle for the first time in weeks. Then, he vanished when winter hit hard. I still worry about what happened to him. Uncle Marcus owned the building, although I had never seen him there. He delegated the whole responsibility to this property management company. Sometimes, I'd see luxury cars drive by slowly late at night. Later, I learned that he would send someone to check on the place. I guess he was watching me more than I realized. Meanwhile, Mom kept sending strange texts like, "Hope you're doing well," but never answered. When I called, her Instagram was full of photos from yacht parties and charity galas. It must be nice to have so much time for charity when your own child has to work 2 jobs just to get by. Aunt Lisa continued to find reasons to increase the rent. Utilities, HOA fees, and your room is prime real estate. Okay, sure. I'm convinced that a converted storage area in the basement with strange mushrooms growing in the corner is prime real estate. I began hiding cash in an old teddy bear that Dad had given me before his death. I had this great idea that once I had enough money, I'd be able to get my own place. But something always came up whenever I got close to a reasonable amount. School fees. My old winter boots wore out. That time, Michael accidentally backed into my car, and I had to pay for the repairs. But what was the final straw? One day, I returned home after my gas station shift to find my room completely ransacked. The bear had been ripped open. Stuffing was everywhere. And guess what? All of my savings were gone. Rebecca claims she was just cleaning and had no idea about the money. Yeah, right. The following week, Aunt Lisa came down to my basement room and informed me that the rent was going up again. Not just a little. We're talking double. She mentioned that property values in the area were increasing. I did the math and realized that even with 2 jobs, I couldn't afford it anymore. But here's the thing. I had been taking classes at a nearby community college. Nothing extravagant, just the basics. Trying to get ahead while still in high school. The counselor there mentioned that I might qualify for financial aid if I took more classes. That meant I had to make a choice. Keep paying Lisa's outrageous rent, or pursue an education. So, I chose education. I had no clear plan. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there any longer. I packed whatever I could fit into my Toyota. The car had strange rust patches all over it, and the heat only worked if you kicked the dashboard in just the right spot. But it was mine. The first night sleeping in the car was actually quite peaceful. We parked behind the laundromat. I used my work keys to sneak in and use the restroom. I had this whole setup. I reclined the driver's seat all the way back, used my work backpack as a pillow, and stacked 5 blankets borrowed from the lost and found box. I thought to myself, this isn't too bad. Then winter struck. Real Chicago winter. The kind where your spit freezes before it reaches the ground. My car's battery started to die from the cold, so I couldn't even run the heat. But the hardest part? It wasn't just the cold or the lack of sleep. It was trying to appear normal at school. Try explaining to your chemistry teacher why your homework is wrinkled and smells like laundry detergent. Or why do you keep wearing the same 3 outfits? The school counselor kept trying to speak with me, but what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I live in my car. But don't worry, it's parked in a really nice alley. Then, my loving cousin Michael decided to play detective. I guess Dad became suspicious about why I wasn't around the house anymore. They followed me one night after my laundry shift. The next day, his TikTok had an entire video series called My Homeless Cousin, a documentary. They recorded everything. My windows were frosted. I tried to study using the light from the laundromat sign. I was caught changing clothes in the backseat once. The videos quickly became popular among their wealthy peers. People began honking their horns and throwing things at my car as they drove past the laundromat at night. The cops also began to show up more frequently. Every few nights, there would be a knock at my window. "Can't sleep here, miss." So, I would drive around until they left, then return. I spent several evenings driving in circles, watching my gas gauge drop and hoping I'd have enough to get to work the next day. But you know what's strange? I started noticing a black SUV parked across the street some nights, always at a different location, but always there. Tinted windows. The engine is running. At first, I thought it was the cops or some creep, but they never bothered me, just sitting there as if they were watching. The temperature dipped to -5 degrees Fahrenheit one night, the kind of cold that hurts your eyes. My car wouldn't start. The phone was dead. What about the laundromat? Closed for repair. I thought, well, this is it. This is how I die. They'll find me frozen, just like the rats in the alley. I wrapped myself in every piece of clothing I owned and tried to think positive thoughts. That's when I heard a knock on my window. I looked up and saw Uncle Marcus standing in the snow. It felt like it was perfectly natural for him to be out at 2 a.m. in Arctic temperatures. He just says, "I think we need to talk." So how did it turn out? The black SUV was his. He had been watching me through the laundromat security cameras for weeks, sending people to check on me. He said he wanted to see what I was capable of. Who does this? What kind of messed up test is this? But honestly, at that point, I was too cold to care about his unusual methods. So there I was, literally turning into a human popsicle in my car, and Uncle Marcus was just standing there in his fancy wool coat, staring at me through the window. I thought he was going to lecture me or call the cops, but instead, he explained, "My office has better heating," as if this was a completely regular situation. His workplace was a small space above the laundromat that I'd never been in before. Turns out, he had this entire private space up there. A desk, a miniature refrigerator, a coffee maker, even a small bathroom. While I was defrosting my fingers around a cup of really wonderful coffee, he just sat there staring at me like he was trying to solve a mystery. Finally, he says, "You know, your dad and I used to sleep in a car, too." Which what? I nearly dropped my coffee. See, I'd always thought of Uncle Marcus as this crazy, rich real estate tycoon who wore suits that cost more than my car. But then he started telling me a story I didn't know. Apparently, he and my father grew up extremely poor. Their mom worked 3 jobs, and they still couldn't afford rent for most months, living like they were homeless. Uncle Marcus pulls out his phone and shows me an old photograph of 2 emaciated kids sitting in a vehicle, eating beans straight from a can. "That's your dad on the left," he says. And yes, the same silly smile I remembered, but on a much younger face. I'm sitting there trying to digest the narrative as he tells it to me. How did they go from homeless teenagers to this? Then, he informs me about the laundromat. The original owner used to let them hang out inside on especially cold nights. They'd help him fix machinery, clean up, and do whatever else was necessary. When the owner got sick, he offered to sell them the place that had just started becoming a scholarship-funded business. But Uncle Marcus had been working construction and saving every dime, so the owner sold it to him for nearly nothing. It was his first property. Then he begins taking out all these old documents from his desk. Real estate deeds, contracts, business plans, all with Dad's notes in the margins. When Dad got sick, Uncle Marcus adds, he made me promise two things. First, I'd watch out for you. Second, I'd make sure you learn to take care of yourself. Then he gives me this look and says, I've got to say, you're doing better at the second part than I expected. I'm sitting there, trying not to cry but failing miserably. Then he drops the big bombshell. He owns half the block around the laundromat, apartment buildings, stores, even that dodgy phone repair shop. And he'd been watching me through security cameras the whole time. He sent his people in the SUV to keep an eye on me. You work 2 jobs without complaining, he said. Keep your grades up. Find ways to survive that most people wouldn't even think of. You've kept that laundromat running better than the manager I hired. He smiled when he said that last part. Then he took out the key. This is for the apartment above my office. I had no idea this studio apartment existed. It's yours, he said. There will be no rent as long as you continue working at the laundromat and maintain good grades. I wanted to turn it down. It felt too much like charity. But he shut it down quickly. This isn't charity. This is an investment. You've got your father's brains and your own kind of determination. I'm investing in that. Then, he showed me the whole file he'd been keeping. Copies of my school records, work reports from Jerry, and even screenshots of those awful TikToks Michael and Rebecca made. They thought they were shaming you, he said. I saw someone who refused to break. It's strange, you know? All this time, I thought he was just a cold, rich guy who didn't care and let his wife treat me badly. Turns out, he was testing me. Yes, it was a bad way to go about it, but I get it now. He wanted to see if I had what my father had. That drive to keep going when everything is against you. Before I left his office that night, he mentioned something else about Dad. He told me about their last conversation when Dad was in the hospital. Dad had made his pledge not to just give me everything. He said I needed to learn to be strong on my own first. But Uncle Marcus added, he also said to know when enough was enough. And kid, you've more than proven yourself. That night, I slept in a proper bed for the first time in months. The apartment was basic, with only one room, a kitchenette, and a bathroom, but it was warm, clean, and safe. But what happened the morning after Uncle Marcus gave me the apartment? I woke up to find my phone flooded with texts from Aunt Lisa. It turned out that Michael had driven past the laundromat on his way to school and noticed me heading down from the upper flat. He took photos. Of course he did. Aunt Lisa arrived at the laundromat during my shift, wearing fancy gym clothes and looking like she was going to explode. She started yelling about how I was trying to kidnap her husband, accusing me of seducing him or something. Yeah, Aunt Lisa, I completely captivated him by being homeless and fixing washing machines. Super glamorous. The customers were all staring, and one old lady who comes in every Wednesday to wash her cat's bedding began filming the whole event on her phone. Aunt Lisa was saying all these wild things about how she always knew I was trouble and how I was exactly like my mother, taking advantage of wealthy men. I stood there with a mop in my hand, wearing my dirty work uniform, thinking, is this really happening right now? Then Jerry emerged from the back room and told Aunt Lisa she had to leave before he called the cops. She left, but not before warning me, this isn't over. That night, I heard Lisa and Uncle Marcus having a huge argument upstairs in his office. Their words were muted, but I could hear Aunt Lisa yelling about that girl. And how dare you? I felt embarrassed like I had ruined their marriage or something. Aunt Lisa later revealed that she spent the night at a friend's place. When I saw Uncle Marcus the next morning, he had heavy bags under his eyes and gave me a tired nod. But the strange thing was Mom suddenly called me for the first time in months, acting concerned. Honey, I'm hearing some unsettling things, she said as if she had any reason to be worried after abandoning me. I'm sure the rumors were given to her by someone, most likely Rebecca. Then she and Derek showed up at my flat unexpectedly. Mom was dressed in one of her latest luxury dresses, and her gaze swept around my tiny studio apartment. "Oh, honey," she began, but the tone was more calculated than concerned. "This is quaint." Derek stood by the door, like he was worried poverty might spread. "What are you doing here?" I asked without offering them a seat. There was nowhere to sit unless they wanted to join me on my unmade bed. Mom started pacing my small space. "We've been hearing things about you and Uncle Marcus." The way she said it made my stomach turn. "What about Uncle Marcus?" I asked. "Come on, honey," she attempted a sly smile. "I know what you're doing. It's clever." "Really? I would have never thought of it at your age. What exactly do you think about getting close to Marcus in this way? Working in his business and portraying the unfortunate, abandoned niece." I was stunned. "You think I'm trying to get his money?" I asked, laughing but sounding harsh. "Who's the woman who sent me to Chicago and then forgot about me? That's not fair." "You were upgrading," I shouted back. "Trading up for a more glamorous life with your real estate husband and charity galas. And now you're concerned I might get any of Uncle Marcus' money before you do?" Derek stepped forward with false authority. "Listen, young lady, your mother and I are concerned about your well-being. What about my welfare?" I laughed again, this time uglier. Where was this concern when Aunt Lisa charged me rent? When I was working 2 jobs and sleeping in my car? Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Don't be theatrical. Lisa would never review my hospital records when I got bronchitis sleeping in that car. Look at your pay stubs from the gas station and laundromat. Look at your rent receipts Lisa insisted I keep." "Oh wait, you can't. You were too busy uploading photos from your yacht parties to take my calls." "That's ancient history," Mom replied, but she was fiddling with her wedding ring, Dad's wedding ring, which she'd upgraded with bigger diamonds. "We're here to help right now," she said. "Derek has a friend who runs a fantastic boarding school in Switzerland. Now you want to help?" I raised my voice. "Or did you just find out? Uncle Marcus is teaching me about the business, and you're worried I might learn something and take a piece of what you think is yours." Mom's expression hardened. She dropped the concerned mother act entirely. "Marcus was your father's brother. Anything he owns should go to me, his wife." "I deserve it," she began, but I interrupted her. "What do you deserve? Dad contributed to the success of this business. He and Uncle Marcus started with nothing. But you've been busy attending charity galas with Derek. I'm learning how to repair washing machines, organize books, and actually help people, just like Dad did." "Your father was a teacher," she spat. "He treated Marcus' business like it was a hobby." "Get out," I pointed at the door. "Go back to your perfect life with your wonderful husband. Go organize another charity gala. Go archive some more family photos because they don't fit your new style. Just go." Derek tried again, but I cut him off. "No. You see here. I understand why you're both here now. You heard I was working with Uncle Marcus and became worried I might get something you think is yours. But here's the thing. I'm not here for anyone's money. I'm here because Uncle Marcus gave me a chance after you threw me away." Mom's face turned red. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" I shot back. "How can you come here and pretend to care about my well-being when all you care about is your financial status?" I opened the door. "By the way, Mom, that pantsuit makes you look desperate." They left. Mom muttered something about ingratitude, and Derek was already on his phone. I shut the door and slid down against it, shaking. I could hear Mom's voice through the thin walls. "I told you it would happen. That tiny gold digger is going to try and take everything." So, after all the drama with Mom and Derek, things went strangely quiet for about a week. I was working one night when Michael rushed into the laundromat. He looked terrified. It turns out he had been using at least his iPad. A note appeared from someone stored as D, simply saying everything was ready for next week. "Lisa, baby, we're finally going to be free." "Michael, the nosy little thing. Read the messages." Aunt Lisa had never logged out of her accounts on that iPad. "Derek was the D you were looking for?" Michael asked. "As in my stepfather, Derek? My mom's husband?" They'd been texting for months. Michael discovered all of these emails that detailed their plans to steal money from Uncle Marcus' business and run away together. They'd been planning it for about a year. Every time Aunt Lisa raised my rent, the money went directly into a hidden account. Michael showed up because he didn't know what to do for the first time in his life. The boy who had mocked me for being poor now realized his mother was about to steal everything and abandon him. I called Uncle Marcus. Part of me wanted to let everything blow up after how they treated me. It would have been some good karma. Uncle Marcus came down to the laundromat right away. Michael was still shivering as he showed Uncle Marcus all the messages. I've never seen Uncle Marcus look so blank. His face just shut down. He placed some calls. His lawyer had been suspicious of some business accounts for a while. The numbers didn't add up, but Aunt Lisa handled all the paperwork. Uncle Marcus trusted her completely, so no one had looked too closely. The lawyer reviewed every account and transaction. Do you know how much they intended to steal? $4.3 million. They had already transferred about $1 million to offshore accounts. Do you remember how Aunt Lisa always complained about property taxes and utility bills? She was also taking that money. But what's the real bombshell? Some of the money came from Michael and Rebecca's college savings. Their own mother was stealing their future so she could run away with my stepfather. Uncle Marcus brought in a whole team of lawyers and accountants. They uncovered all of Aunt Lisa's fake businesses. She'd written checks to these companies for maintenance or supplies, but the money would just go into secret accounts. Aunt Lisa stayed very normal throughout the entire ordeal. She's still posting selfies from her workouts on Instagram. She is still running her PTA meetings, still pretending to be the perfect mom. Derek was the same. He took Mom to charity events, bought her expensive gifts, and played the loyal spouse. The lawyers told us to wait and gather more evidence before confronting them. But Rebecca also found everything on the iPad. She showed up at my flat one night crying with mascara all over her face and asked if she could stay for the first time in her life. She lacked a proper sleeping environment. It was strange having her there. This girl who had mocked me for being homeless was now almost destitute herself. She couldn't stand living in the same house with Aunt Lisa after learning everything. She slept on my tiny futon, used my cheap shampoo, dressed in Target clothes, and apologized repeatedly for how she treated me. But honestly, seeing her realize that money doesn't make you a better person was enough. Uncle Marcus had his IT team monitor all accounts and transactions. The goal was to catch them just before they tried to flee. But Aunt Lisa must have realized something was wrong because she started shifting money faster. Michael celebrated his 18th birthday the next morning. Aunt Lisa had arranged a big event at their house, complete with a DJ, catering, and even a mini-golf in the backyard. She was especially polite to everyone, probably because she knew it was her last weekend there. Uncle Marcus decided it was time to confront them. We had all the proof ready and gathered everyone in one location. Rebecca asked if we should tell my mom first, but Uncle Marcus said no. We needed to see her honest reaction to determine if she was involved. The morning of Michael's birthday celebration was strange. Aunt Lisa was rushing around, preparing centerpieces and inspecting the caterer, while secretly planning to leave with my stepfather the next day. Rebecca and I helped set up, both knowing everything was about to explode but trying to act normal. Michael looked like he was about to throw up every time Aunt Lisa touched him. Uncle Marcus had a great plan. His lawyer would show up suddenly at the party with crucial paperwork. They'd gather everyone in the living room and then expose all the evidence. The FBI was waiting nearby. Yes, actual FBI agents. Because stealing millions from legitimate businesses while trying to escape the country is definitely their thing. Mom arrived early, all excited about the party. She hadn't spoken to me since the whole Switzerland boarding school situation, but pretended everything was fine. Derek entered behind her, holding a large, wrapped package. Later, I found out it was a high-end gaming system. I guess he thought he could buy Michael's silence or something. The party began at 2 p.m., with all of Michael's wealthy classmates arriving in BMWs and Mercedes that their parents bought for them. The DJ played music. People were swimming in the pool. Everything seemed normal, but Rebecca, Michael, and I just watched. Lisa and Derek kept checking their phones and whispering to each other. At around 4 p.m., the lawyer arrived. He was holding a large folder and looked serious. Aunt Lisa's face when she saw him? I wish I had a photo. She knew what was coming. Everyone gathered in the living room, and some of Michael's friends tried to stay, but Uncle Marcus told them, only family. They quickly left. My mother was fussing about interrupting the party, but then the lawyer began placing documents on the coffee table. Bank statements, Emails, transfer records, and pictures of Aunt Lisa and Derek were taken by a private investigator. The room became quieter with every piece of paper. Then he played a clip of Aunt Lisa and Derek discussing their plans, laughing at how everyone had been too blind to see. Mom stopped breathing when she heard Derek's voice. She just froze. Aunt Lisa tried to claim the recording was fake, but Uncle Marcus took out her iPad, the one Michael discovered the messages on. He began reading their texts aloud. The shouting that followed was unbelievable. Mom lunged at Derek and started hitting him with her purse, which, by the way, was full of metal objects. Aunt Lisa tried to flee, but the FBI agents were already on site. One agent simply said, "Lisa Anderson, you're under arrest for wire fraud and embezzlement." They took both of them away in handcuffs. Aunt Lisa kept yelling about how we ruined her life. But the worst part? Neither of them even looked at their children. Your son's 18th birthday turned into a crime scene, and you can't even apologize? Mom had a complete meltdown. Derek had been using her money. She had signed a series of papers without reading them because she trusted him, and he practically stole everything she had left from her father's life insurance. The following few weeks were chaotic. The FBI investigation uncovered even more evidence. Aunt Lisa and Derek had been planning this for more than a year. They had fake passports, offshore money, and an entire secret life ready to go. They had taken from almost everyone: the business, the kids' education funds, and even charity money from those fancy parties they always attended. Uncle Marcus was watching everyone. Rebecca and Michael basically moved into my small apartment. We set up a whole system. Michael slept on the futon. Rebecca shared my bed, and we all used the same bathroom, which was weird. They both found jobs at the laundromat. Rebecca is actually really good with clients when she isn't rude to them, while Michael's a genius with machines. He discovered an issue with the industrial dryer that even the repairman couldn't fix. Mom went to rehab, not for drugs, but to process everything. She had been so focused on looking good and living the perfect rich life that she ignored all of Derek's warning signs. Uncle Marcus really stepped up. He's been teaching us all about the business. He says he hopes me, Rebecca, and Michael can run it together someday. We all have our strengths. I'm great with math like my father was. Rebecca is amazing with people when she tries. And Michael's a genius with machines. Last week, we all went to Dad's grave together for the first time. Uncle Marcus told us more about himself, including how he helped build this whole business while still teaching because he believed in helping people. Aunt Lisa and Derek are now in jail. It turns out that stealing millions and planning to flee the country is a crime. They're both trying to blame each other, which would be funny if it weren't so sad. Michael and Rebecca are still struggling with it. Imagine finding out your mother cared more about running away with someone else's husband than she did about you. But do you know what's strange? We're actually better now, all of us. Mom is facing her issues rather than hiding behind fancy sunglasses. Rebecca and Michael are learning what it means to really work for something. I've realized that accepting help from others isn't a sign of weakness. Sometimes, I look around at my life and can't believe how different it is from a year ago. For instance, I'm sitting in the laundry office, which is also my workplace. I handle the place, and it dawns on me. Despite losing my family, I'm doing much better now. TLDR, discovered aunt and stepfather were secret lovers who planned to steal millions and run. They were arrested at a birthday party. Mom had a breakdown and went to rehab. My cousins learned humility through laundry, and we all became a true family. Also, Dad was playing 4D chess from beyond the grave. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Thank you for joining us on this unbelievable journey of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. From the pain of losing a parent to the shocking revelation of a family's dark secrets, this story reminds us that sometimes, the people we trust the most can hurt us the deepest. Yet, through all the hardship, the protagonist found strength and courage to rise above, building a new life with those who truly cared. This tale proves that no matter how tough life gets, you can overcome even the most trying circumstances with determination and the right people by your side. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring real-life journeys. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and like the video to help us grow our community.